What if I told you that at the dawn of the new millennium, a man appeared on the internet claiming to be a soldier from a war-torn America in the year 2036? This wasn't some casual troll. For 5 months, he engaged with a captivated audience, answering questions with unnerving detail. He described his time machine, mounted in the back of a classic Chevy. He posted diagrams, schematics, and even a picture of his military insignia from the future. He warned us of a coming second American Civil War, a brief but brutal nuclear exchange, and a future where the America we know was gone forever. And then, in the spring of 2001, he said goodbye and vanished. He was never heard from again. His name was John Titor. For over 2 decades, that name has been a ghost in the machine of the internet, a legend whispered in forums and dissected in late-night conversations. Was he the greatest hoax ever perpetrated online, or was he exactly what he claimed to be? A genuine time traveler who gave us a glimpse into a dark future. Today, we're going down that rabbit hole. We're going to examine the posts, the predictions, the machine, the mission, and the massive investigation that has tried to unmask the man who called himself John Titor. This is the unsettling and unforgettable story of the man who came from 2036. To understand John Titor, you have to remember the internet of the year 2000. It was the Wild West, a place of clunky forums and dial-up modems. It was on these forums, most notably the one for Art Bell's late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM, that John Titor made his stand. He introduced himself as an American soldier from 2036, stopping in our time for personal reasons while on a mission to 1975. He was immediately bombarded with questions, and for months, he answered them patiently. It was through these answers that he painted a terrifying picture of his world. The central event that shaped his time, he said, was the Second American Civil War. He claimed it would begin as a slow burn of civil unrest around 2004-2005, escalating into a decade-long conflict. This wasn't North versus South, but urban versus rural, citizen against citizen, fighting a decentralized federal government they no longer trusted. He claimed he fought in this war himself as part of a shotgun militia in Florida. This war, he explained, fundamentally broke the United States. The nation fractured into 5 sovereign regions, with a new, weaker capital established in Omaha, Nebraska, a more defensible location after Washington, D.C. was hit hard. But the worst was yet to come. In 2015, with America already tearing itself apart, the world tipped into global conflict. Titor claimed Russia launched a nuclear strike against major American, Chinese, and European cities. He called it Unday, a short, horrifically effective nuclear war that killed 3 billion people. The world he described in 2036 was a post-apocalypse, but not the kind we see in movies. It was a quieter, more personal struggle. Life was centered on small, local communities. People grew their own food and relied on their neighbors, not a distant government. In his telling, his world was harder, but in some ways, more meaningful. He often spoke of our time with a kind of pity, calling us sheep, distracted by consumerism and unaware of the cliff's edge right in front of us. This wasn't just a science fiction story, it was a direct critique of our society, a warning that the bill for our political divisions and willful ignorance was about to come due. Whether you believed him or not, his diagnosis of our modern problems felt terrifyingly plausible. Every time travel story needs a time machine, and John Titor's was a masterpiece of gritty detail. He called it the C-204 Time Distortion Gravity Displacement Unit, a 500-pound piece of military hardware he had mounted in a 1967 Chevrolet. He was remarkably open about how it worked, posting pages from its alleged technical manual. He described a complex process involving 2 microsingularities, tiny, contained black holes. By manipulating these with powerful magnetic fields, he could create a localized bubble of distorted gravity, allowing the machine to move between different realities or world lines. This wasn't magic, it was engineering based on complex and dangerous theoretical physics. But why undertake such a journey? What was the mission? This is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Titor's primary mission was to travel from 2036 to 1975 to acquire a specific computer, an IBM 5100 portable computer. His explanation for this was a stroke of genius. He claimed the IBM 5100, an old 50-pound machine from the 70s, had a secret, undocumented feature. It was one of the first computers capable of emulating the programming languages of older IBM main. This was vital, he said, to solve a looming crisis in his time. The 2038 bug is a real, known issue in computer science, similar to Y2K. On January 19th, many 32-bit computer systems will run out of space to count the seconds, causing them to crash or reset their clocks to the past. Titor claimed this bug was causing catastrophic failures in the aging Unix systems his society still relied on. The IBM 5100, with its unique debugging function, was the key to translating the old code and preventing a total collapse. And here's the bombshell. The secret feature of the IBM 5100 is real. After Titor's story became famous, former IBM engineers came forward and confirmed it. Bob Dubb, an engineer on the project, verified that the machine did indeed have this undocumented debugging capability, a secret kept to protect IBM's more expensive mainframe business. How could a random person on an internet forum in 2000 know a 25-year-old trade secret that wasn't public knowledge? You couldn't just Google it. This one, verifiable fact became the cornerstone of the entire John Titor legend. It was the piece of evidence that convinced many that, somehow, Titor had access to information he shouldn't have had. It was the smoking gun that suggested his story was more than just an elaborate fiction. A time traveler is only as good as his predictions. This was the ultimate test for John Titor, and it's where his story becomes a mix of stunning hits and undeniable misses. But first, Titor had the perfect defense built into his narrative. He was a firm believer in the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. This theory suggests that every possible outcome creates a new, separate universe, or world. According to Titor, his very presence in our past created a new world line, one that was about 2% different from his own. This meant his predictions weren't prophecies for our future. They were the history of his past. Our timeline might diverge. Convenient? Absolutely. But it was also a brilliant way to ensure he could never be definitively proven wrong. With that cosmic asterisk in place, let's look at the scoreboard. The misses were big. His central prediction, the Second American Civil War starting around 2005, did not happen. His claim that the 2008 Olympics would be canceled was also wrong. And most importantly, the year 2015 came and went without a day. The global nuclear war he described. By his own timeline, we should be living in a post-apocalyptic society. We are not. For skeptics, that's case closed. He was a fraud. But then you look at the other predictions, and the door creaks back open. He warned that a future war in the Middle East would be justified by a search for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. The Iraq War, justified on precisely that premise, began in 2003, just 2 years after he disappeared. He spoke at length about a future where personal freedoms and privacy would be willingly sacrificed for safety, and where government surveillance would become a constant part of life. Looking back from our post-9/11 world, his warnings sound chillingly He also made references to a mad cow-like disease spreading, which mirrored the CJD crisis that became a major health scare in the years after his posts. So what do we make of this? The believers argue that the many worlds theory explains the misses, and that his hits on the general direction of society were fundamentally correct. Skeptics argue that his hits were just shrewd guesses, based on the current events of his time. The predictions are the heart of the John Titor paradox. They are both the strongest evidence against him and the most compelling reason to keep the investigation alive. On March 24, 2001, John Titor announced his departure and was never heard from again. He left behind a mystery that would obsess internet sleuths for decades. Who is he? The investigation eventually zeroed in on one primary theory. It all started when investigators discovered that a company called the John Titor Foundation, incorporated in 2003, the man behind it was Larry Hober, an entertainment lawyer in Florida. When questioned, Hober claimed he was simply representing the real Titor's family, but he offered no proof. The theory solidified when people looked at Larry's brother, Maury Hober. Maury was a computer scientist and an expert in Unix systems and security, the exact field related to the IBM 5100 and the 2038 bug. The Hober brothers theory suggests that Maury, the tech expert, wrote the posts, while Larry, the lawyer, handled the legal side, perhaps hoping to cash in on the story with a book or movie. It's the most plausible real-world explanation. It accounts for the technical knowledge, the Florida connection, and the financial motive. But it's not a closed case. Both brothers have always denied being John Titor, and no definitive proof has ever surfaced. So, Titor remains a ghost, and his legacy is powerful. His story directly inspired the acclaimed anime series Steins Gate, which introduced the legend to millions of new fans. He pioneered a new kind of interactive storytelling, inviting a community to build a world with him. Ultimately, whether he was real or a hoax almost doesn't matter anymore. The story persists because it speaks to our deepest anxieties and hopes. The fear that our society is fragile, and the strange hope that if it all fell apart, we might rediscover something more meaningful in the Rabula life, centered on community instead of consumerism. So we find ourselves at the end of the rabbit hole, with no easy answers. John Titor remains an enigma. You can choose to see him as the Hober brothers, two clever individuals who pulled off the greatest internet hoax of all time, a masterful work of fiction. Or you can choose to see him as he presented himself, a soldier out of time who took a detour to deliver a warning that our future is not fixed. Perhaps his true mission was never about retrieving a computer. Perhaps it was about planting an idea that would force us to look up from our screens and pay attention to the world around us before it's too late. The John Titor story holds up a mirror and asks each of us, in a world of deep uncertainty, What do you choose to believe? The logical explanation or the fantastic one? The final decision, the choice to believe, is yours. So, what do you think? Was John Titor the greatest internet hoax ever? Or a genuine traveler from a dark future? I want to know your theory. Let me know down in the comments. This is one of those stories where the discussion is just as important as the story itself. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the internet's greatest mysteries, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the unknown. Thanks for watching. Stay curious.